Hello, my name is Matthew, and I'm going to give my thoughts on what's happening in America currently, specifically in regards to the protests, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of which was sparked by the death of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer. And also, I was tagged in a video by Brian at Bookish to also read something from a black author. So I'm going to do both of those things. And the protests are just an inevitable result of um, the systematic racism and police brutality and things like that. And I think it's justified, and it's every American citizen's right to be able to protest peacefully. Also, my thoughts on the looting, which is kind of what I'd like to focus on. And the thing that bothers me the most, or the thing that I find most telling in regards to the looters, rioters, and non peaceful protesters, the violent protesters, is the swift, unilateral condemnation of that kind of behavior. And it's instinctual. Everybody knows that stealing, looting, arson, any sort of act of violence is wrong. And through all of the steps, everybody knows that it's wrong, and there are wheels that turn nearly automatically that know how to handle them. So, police officers, court systems, the government, the larger government, federal government, um, television, broadcast news, the newscasters, journalists, people at home, without hesitation, you know that looting is wrong. And that swiftness, that unilateral condemnation, is something that is strikingly missing, or was missing, at the death of George Floyd. Instead, there was pause, there was hesitation. Um, the police officer wasn't arrested immediately, he wasn't stopped by his accomplices. Instead, all of these systems of government, the police force, the justice system, the courts, all the television news, hesitated, and there was skepticism and suspicion about coming to the conclusion that this man was murdered in broad daylight by a police officer, in front of other police officers, in front of other people. No one, through that whole process, there wasn't swift, immediate action in the way that everybody knows how to handle the looters. I'm going to read the beginning of a novel by The Sellout. This is by Paul Beatty. He won the Man Booker Prize a few years ago. That's a cover. This is the beginning of the novel. Excuse me. This may be hard to believe, coming from a black man, but I've never stolen anything, never cheated on my taxes or at cards, never snuck into the movies or failed to give back the extra change to a drugstore cashier, indifferent to the ways of mercantilism and minimum wage expectations. I've never burgled a house, held up a liquor store, never boarded a crowded bus or subway car, sat in a reserved seat for the elderly, pulled out my gigantic penis and masturbated to the satisfaction with a perverted yet somehow crestfallen look on my face. But here I am in the cavernous chambers of the Supreme Court of the United States. Well, This is a satire. The book is about a black man in America that decides to reinstate slavery in a certain town in California, I believe. The beginning of it, believe it or not, as a black man, I've never burgled, I've never stolen anything, I've never had public perversions on a bus, and on and on and on. There's a judgment cast in there on the reader that you can't miss. The reason that the satire works, the reason that this social commentary works, is because there is a perception of a black man, and it can only be a black man. You couldn't say, believe it or not, as a redhead, I've never stolen anything, or believe it or not, as a Jew, or a Native American, or a Samoan, or Italian, or French, or Russian, or anything. It has to be a black man, because unfortunately, whether you're racist or not, you're aware of systematic racism and the perception of black men in America for the entire history of America. So it works, the satire works because the racism still exists. It doesn't work otherwise. And if it's amusing to read, which it is, there's a somber reflection, because you have to concede prejudices in order to read it. Not that you're a racist yourself, but you have to accept that it exists today with immediate consequences. And that also goes back to my thoughts on specifically how we ended up with George Floyd being dead, having a white police officer sitting on his neck for 9 minutes, almost 9 minutes, until his death. And it only could have been a black man that this could have happened in. A white police officer would never have done this if it was a white woman. If he did, the other police officers would have stopped him. And if they didn't, the court systems and the television stations all would know what to do. So the fact that wheels are in place that know exactly how to handle crimes and how to view bad things that happen, unlawfulness, that can't turn, specifically when it's a black man. If, in another example, if it was a black police officer that had sat on a white person's neck, there would be swift action. Everyone knows how to handle it. There wouldn't be internet forums and people having conversations at work and in their homes about maybe we don't know the whole picture, maybe we don't have the entire context, maybe something happened right beforehand. You wouldn't have those things. The only reason that there's a discussion at all is because a black man died at the hands of the police, and no one knew how to handle it swiftly. There wasn't that snap of, okay, a crime has been committed, and now we have to handle it. So I guess I'll end there. Hopefully someday soon we will know how to handle these things. There will be immediate action when things like this happen. So I'll end there. Leave a comment if you would like. I'm not even sure I made much sense. I'm not very good at talking about these kinds of things, especially. Anyway, I'll leave a comment if you like.